Hey everyone, just gonna turn on the camera here. So, how's everybody doing today? I had some questions on the LCD again, so we're gonna do a little bit of research, see if it actually does have issues. So let me see if I can adjust this so you can see it better. There we go. So the issue is that the SD card doesn't work. Right now I have it in the computer. And let me see if I can show you the desktop here. So over in the desktop, I'm going to go into Slicer and try and slice something. Hopefully I have a file. If I don't, I'll download one. But I got to open up Slicer, I guess, separately. So I'm actually going to open up Cura instead, just to do it the easy way. So Cura will pop up in a second, so I'll bring it back to the workbench and show you the issue. Over here we have an SD card on the back, and apparently it's not reading. So we're going to figure out why or if it's not reading. So I'll look at questions in a second in the chat. So I guess there's no questions. Hopefully you can hear me. I don't know how well the speaker's working since I reallocated where things are. But let me show you the desktop. So over here I'm using Cura, and I'm going to pull a file in. So let me see if I've got one that's already available. Looks like I've got a file already available. So I'll show you what it looks like. This is just the little thing I designed last week to hold my mic on my rig, so it just bolts in. So we're going to use that file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cancel this for a second. It's already a G code, that's why I'm saying that. So let me hit Control Z and see if I can get it out of there. Or we'll just save it to a file. That'll make it easier. So I'm going to save this to my SD card on the root. And we'll double check to see if it's there. I guess we're going to do this through file folders. Give me a second here. So it is there. So I'm going to pop this out, put it in the screen and see what's going on. So I'm going to take this out, pop it out of the container, grab this, and put it in here. And what they're saying is they couldn't see it. So I'm going to push down. I'm going to see if it actually shows up. So print from media. So they're correct, we don't see it. So let's try a different LCD and see if we can see if the problem follows it. So I'm going to go over and first open up VS Code so you can see what's going on. Inside VS Code, I'm going to open a folder. Actually, you can't see what I'm doing, so let me bring this over so where you can see it. So I'm going to open a folder. I'm going to go to my downloads folder. I'm going to open up Marlin 2.0, 2.0, select folder. Inside here, we're going to have to figure out what the configuration is. So we'll go over to source, core, boards.h, search on MKS underscore SGen. And it's the second one down here because it's the SGen L. So I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to close out of boards, minimize core, source, go to configuration.h, search on motherboard, paste it over where the ramps is for the default configuration, change this to -1. Of course, my keyboard's not working, so let's do this. There we go. And then we need to find out what kind of SD card this one would have. So it's a RepRap Full Graphics Smart Controller. So it's discount after. There we go. So this is the actual type we're currently using. So now we need to look for USB and SD support, I think. Let's do SD support. There it is. We're gonna stay with the default of English, but we're interested in SD support. So I'm gonna uncomment that. This is just to verify our current configuration, and then there's a retry down here for it. I'm not gonna use that at the moment. So I'm just going to set up the board for the actual configuration. So it's LPC 1769 as the chipset. And the place that I found that was under source core boards.h. And this is where our chipset is residing down in here. So I'm going to close this out. I'm going to do a clean real quick. And then I'm going to do an upload because I'm already connected to it. And I'll check on the chat while that's going on. Thanks. Took me a little bit of work to get that into a position that kind of works. It's right in between the actual display on the table and the computer. But I'll be trying to upgrade the way that the stream works a little bit later. So this failed for a build. So let's see, please specify your upload environment or use a global. So the reason that's not happening is if you look over here, I have this open, which is grabbing the port. So I'll close it, do it again. And this should in theory work now. But it apparently isn't, so there might be another place I'm connected. I don't see it in Pronterface. Close that out. Let's do a clean again. It might also be the LCD. So let's try and upload and see if it works. So far, so good. Okay, this is nearing completion. And it failed again, so upload port. So I'm going to go over to here and see if I can see the actual upload and see what's going on. So I'm going to see if the D drive exists, which it doesn't. So I'm going to check my connection on my regular setup. So I'm going to go over here to my desktop. And I'm going to unplug this for a moment. I'm going to pop this out and this out. And then I'm going to plug this back in. And then we'll check on the computer. So if we go to the desktop now, we can see no drive at the moment, but we can hear it beep. So that's super odd. So I recently did a upgrade on my computer for the software. So I'm going to look at everything and see what's going on. I'm repowering the USB. I should see something, but maybe not. So I don't see it there, so I'm going to go over to Device Manager and see what's going on. So in Device Manager, let's see what we've got. We've got a COM port, so we know that's working. Now let's go over and check on the drives. Maybe there's something going on with that. So one of these is a drive. Disk drive. So it's there. For some reason I can't see it, but it's there. So there's something on the computer side that's occurring. And I don't know what it is, but we can work around it. So I'll show you how to do that. Let's just double check Pronterface and see if it's actually working. So if I go over to my desktop, Pronterface, I'm going to see if we can connect to drive 10. We can, so that works. So there's something that I changed that's not working very well, and I'll show you the way that we can work around it for the moment. So I'm going to go over to the desktop. I'm going to power down the board. I'm going to pop out the drive, and I'm actually just going to load it manually. So I'll put it inside here, and I'll put this in the computer. And then we'll go back over and load it via VS Code. So inside VS Code, hang on, I gotta get my screens all so you can see them. I'm going to scroll up here, right click on .pio. I'm gonna go to Reveal in Explorer. Inside Explorer, I'm gonna go to the .pio folder, the build folder, LPC 1769. And our build is right here, so I'm going to right click and I'm going to send it to the D drive. So now that we have that set, I'm going to go back to the desktop and hopefully fix this. So I'm going to pop this out. I'm going to take the drive out. I'm going to drop it in here. And I'm going to power it up. So it may be ready in a second. Let's see if we actually have a drive. So I don't see a drive, so I'm going to reopen my folder here, and I still don't see it. So there is something wrong. I don't know exactly what it is, but we're not going to worry about it. So I'm going to go back over here, disconnect this, and I'm going to see if I can get this to work. Note these are plugged in backwards, so I could possibly have burned something out and not known it. But let's see what happens. So it's plugged in. We have the right firmware. Let's go into the menu. Go down to media. And we still don't have media. So we're going to try a different drive. Or not a drive, excuse me, a different LCD. So I'm going to pop this off and grab a different one. So let's see, where did I put them? There they are. So we'll try this one. I can't remember how it works, but see what we get here. I'm going to plug it into the first port. I'm looking to light it up. So it's not lighting up. So I'm going to go over to this one. It's not lighting up. Go over to this one. And obviously that one's not the right size. So we'll try a different one. So I'm pretty sure that one might work. Let me grab some cables for it. So I'm going to power this down. I'm going to go to the first COM port, being the EXP1. I'll do EXP1 on here. Flip that over for a second and grab another one. So, notch connector in this case, notch connector in the back on the second EXP. And then we'll power it up and see what happens. So it's powering, so that's good. So now we're going to power it down. We're going to grab the drive and we're going to change it in the firmware. So I'll plug this in to the computer. I'm then going to go over to VS Code. And inside VS Code, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the configuration.h tab. We're going to search on reprap underscore discount. And apparently not find anything. That's awesome. Let's try again. Actually, it's right in front of us. Let's do that again. So we're going to comment this out. We're then going to find the other one. This is for the full graphics discount smart controller, so it's going to take me a second. There it is. So we'll remove the comment here and we'll recompile and then copy it over. And I'll check on the chat while that's going on. It's awfully quiet in the chat today. It's okay to ask questions in the chat if you like. So it didn't look like it built right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean and I'm going to rebuild again. And while this is rebuilding, I'll check on the chat. No, it's still quiet. So as soon as this finishes, I'm going to copy it over manually. So I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to minimize this and this. I'm going to right click on .pio. I'm then going to go to Reveal in Explorer. Go into the .pio, then go into the build, the chipset, which is LPC 1769. Right click and send to my D drive, which is the USB device, not the actual motherboard. And then I'll go back to the actual computer. Actually, you can't see what I'm doing. Sorry about that. So all I did was right click and send to the D drive. So let me go back to the workbench. Pop out the drive, put it back in, plug this in, and see if it works. And it does. So let's try the drive in it after we get it all ready here. So I'm going to click. I can navigate the menus. So I'm going to now put the drive in, hopefully the correct way. I'm then going to go and find the media. And apparently it's not reading it. That's awesome. So this might be a problem with multiple media. So there's a G code that we can check, but I'm going to power cycle once just to make sure. And we might have to try the retry, so we'll figure that out in a second. So I'll pick this up. I'll click here. Go to release media or attach media. And there's nothing. So we're going to actually try the G codes on this and see if we can see anything on the actual drive. So I'm going to click here to look at Pronterface, but I have to look up the G code. So I'm going to go to the browser for a second. And inside the browser, I'm going to search on Marlin fw.org. Go to, let's see, help, G codes, all documents. We'll search on SD drive, list SD card, so it's M20. So I don't know if that's going to work, but it says list entire contents of SD card to serial output. So let's see. We'll do M20 right here after we connect. And I'll show you what I'm doing. So I'm going to type M20, enter. It says no media. So which card would it be reading? So let's double check the media again. So I'm going to go back over to the desktop for a second. I know this is extremely boring troubleshooting. Disconnect that. Pop out the drive. Put the drive in here. And then reconnect. So on the computer, go over to the desktop. We'll confirm that there's actually a file on there, which it says there is. And it's got a size to it, so we know it's true. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this file off for a second, put it someplace else. And then I'm going to format this drive. And that's formatted at FAT32, so I'm going to close this. Then I'm going to send it to my E drive. Then I'm going to check my E drive. There's one file there. So I'm going to pop this out and put it back in and see if it changes anything. So I'm going to take this out, place it in the drive, power it back up. Click, navigate to where it should be release media, attached media, nothing. Let's go to the info screen, nothing. So I'm gonna pop this out and try something different. I just want to try an experiment. So I'm gonna pop this drive out. I'm gonna put it in here for a second and see if maybe it's reading the wrong card. So there we go. Put it in the computer. Go back to the desktop. Grab it off my C drive and send it to this drive. Double check it's there. And then we'll go back to the desktop and try this again. Pop out the drive. Pop it out here. Put it in here. Good times. There we go. Connect it. Power it back up. Now what we're going to do is actually go over to Marlin, or not Marlin, over to Pronterface and see what's going on. So inside here, we're going to see if we can see the drive after we connect and do an M20. Hang on a second here. So it could be that this file is showing up and it's reading the wrong drive. So we see it right here. So what we can do next is pop the drive out. So I'm going to disconnect the power. I'm going to pop this drive out. I'm going to plug it back in because the firmware is already loaded. And we'll see if we can see firmware. Originally, the ramps didn't have a separate media, so this might be related. Look, we got print from media. That's weird. So now we see it. So I'm gonna reverse the experiment, power it down, make sure that I didn't make a mistake by putting this back in, plug this in, and we'll test it. So we'll scroll all the way down to the bottom. It says print from media. So the problem might be that I just didn't know there was one more menu on this particular one. So let's try going back to the previous LCD, and I'll check on the chat in a second. So I'm going to pop this out. It might just be that I didn't know what I was doing, but these are ways you can confirm it. And plugging this in like before is going to be a little bit odd. I might get it backwards, so it might take 2 tries to get this right, but I have to plug it in with the connector side in the opposite direction. So plug that in, plug this in. Looks like I'm right. Put this where you can actually see it. Now I might be wrong, but it's also the firmware is not loaded, so we're gonna have to change that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna power it down, pop the drive, put it back in here, and we'll change it back to the other rep. Put it in the computer. I'll check on the chat in 2 seconds. I just want to go back over to VS Code real quick here. So on VS Code, we're going to comment this out as soon as we're on it. There we go. And we'll search back up. We'll remove the comment here. And then we'll rebuild and then upload. It might fail again, but we can do a clean. So let me check on the chat here. Mayonnaise, I think it's clear of mayonnaise. It may have been a different board. Oh, for this particular configuration, just to test the LCD, it can run on 5 volts of power. But when you're running the printer, obviously you're going to use a PSU. But for safety, when I demonstrated, I leave the PSU off and run off of USB power. So it looks like the compile completed. So I'm going to go back over to VS Code. I'm going to double click on .pio, then go to build, LPC 1769, and then I'm going to reveal in a file explorer, open that up, and right click and send it to the drive again. And then I'm going to pop that out so you can see what I'm doing, and of course you can't see what I'm doing currently, so I'll show you again. Sorry, I opened up this folder, I thought it was appearing. I right clicked and then I did send to my D drive. So let me bring you back over to the desktop. Pop out the drive, pop it into here. Hang on, I'll bring the camera back up. Slide that in, power it back up, make sure we get a monitor or LCD that's working. Looks like we do. So I'll grab the drive out of the other LED, or LCD, pardon me. I'll place this in here. I'll then click Release Media, Print from Media. So apparently I didn't know there was a menu below it. So that's the whole issue. So the person that asked me about that earlier today, it's one menu deeper. So does anybody else have any questions, or would you like me to show you something different? Okay, well, let me see if I can show you something different. So I talk a lot about sensors and end stops. So on this board, there's another connector that we can use. This is for the older style TFTs that they originally made. Let me see if I have any on hand. Maybe we can do two at once. So it does look like I have one. I just have to find the actual cabling for it. So it's 4 pins, and I believe it's the one on top. It could be the one on bottom. I'm not sure if we need to power it or not, but we can check that, and I'll show you a trick to checking it. If you go over to the browser, let me find the browser real quick here. Inside the browser, you can search, obviously, on MakerBase, MKS, SGen L v2.0, GitHub, and press enter. This will take you directly to it. And we're going to look for pinouts, so hardware. We'll go into the first one just to see what's going on. And there's something that says pin. So this should tell us a little bit about it. So over here you can see that there's pins, and this is AUX 1 or auxiliary 1, and there's 2 5-volt pins, so that probably would be the one we'd work with. So now I got to find a 4-pin connector. This might take a second. Let me check my other cabinet. Okay, I might not have one. I obviously have one, I just don't know where I put it. So let me check another bin here real quick. Well, I guess we're gonna have to hold off on that. Maybe I'll show you guys how to make these in the future, but it looks like I don't have one on hand. So maybe we can do something different. Why are the MKS boards so hard to upload to the motherboard? This one technically isn't hard, but I was probably messing around with it and possibly broke something. but I probably have another one that does work, but it shouldn't be that hard. So let's see if removing these will make it easier. And then I'll pop this out. And there's no jumpers here that I can see that need to be jumped. So there could be an issue with what I use to keep it to the table. So if I take that off, maybe it'll help. It's not conductive, so it shouldn't be an issue. This is just modeler's putty for museums. So it essentially comes right off. But if you look at the board, you can't see any burn marks, so you know that that's okay. So I'll put that back here. I'll actually try a different cable. That might be the issue. So this one's significantly shorter. So I don't know how well it's going to reach. It's also shielded better. And let's see if what you're seeing here. So sorry. So I put a different cable in. This is a shielded cable. So let's check on the computer real quick here. So I still don't see it, but I just recently did an update on the computer, so it might be part of the reason. Or it could be a voltage issue. So I'll pop this out so you can see what I'm doing. Let's try moving the 3.3 volts to 5 volts and seeing if that makes any difference. Probably not. Oops. See, that's 3.3. That's 5. This is just IC logic, so it shouldn't make a difference. Nope, no difference at all. So I'll pop that out, and I'll grab a different board just to verify that it's just this board. Because I may have broken something when I was playing around with the actual LED and just don't know it. So here's another MKS S-Gen L. Let's plug it in. Seems to be working, and it's showing up. So I'll show you on the computer what's occurring. So it's working right here. You can see that the drive appears. So what I'm going to do just to verify things is I'm going to see if maybe this config is better than the previous one. So I'm going to copy it. I'm then going to paste it right here. I have my extensions on so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to rename it and call it firmware.bin, which essentially is what it's called. I'm then going to power it off on the desktop. I'll pop this out. I'm going to take the drive out of this one, put it right here, pop this one in, and this should, in theory, if nothing's broken, fix the problem, even though this is odd, but we'll see. It's the same configuration on a different board. Okay, that fixed it. So I'll show you what's going on. So if I go to the desktop, I transition over, I now have a D drive. So either something's wrong with my TFT card, or there was something different about my firmware. So that seems to be the issue that I was having. I know that's a weird way to check for a problem, but I had two boards, usually in case I break one. But in this case, I just didn't set it up right. So let me check on the chat here. Well, it's still pretty quiet. So where's everyone from, by the way? I know there's a couple people from, what is it, Canada, Texas. But let me see if I can find some cables while I'm looking around. I'm going to put a cable rack on this rack as soon as I get a chance, but I haven't gotten around to it. That's my next design, I guess. I'm doing pretty good, Jessica. Long time no see. How's the family? And how's the 3D printing? Explain the mix-up in the details. The details for the boards? You mean between the two different MKS SGENA L version 2? Something is either corrupted on the SD card, or there was some kind of funky state that the motherboard got into, but we can try and reverse the problem now. So I'll show you that. If I go over to the desktop over here and I pop this out and I pop this drive in, if it works, which it probably will, we can try this in reverse. So I'll click here, connect this, and then check on the computer. So if we go over to the desktop, we currently have a drive because its firmware is loaded. So I'm going to delete this for the moment to eliminate a variable. I'm going to right click and I'm going to rename this, or copy this, then rename it, so that we can reload the old firmware again. And this will confirm or dispute our problem. And my guess is that if it does cause an issue, it's Marlin related, and it's probably due to my keyboard. So call this firmware. .bin, and this will reload the firmware. So we'll go back over to the desktop. We'll actually do the reset button, then we'll let it go, and this should load the firmware. And so the drive is gone again. So it was firmware related in this case. Something about my numpad isn't working, so I'll show you how we'll fix that. If you power this down, pop this out, my computer seems to have an issue on the num lock every once in a while, so I'll put this back on the computer and see if we can sort it out with the regular keyboard. So if we go to VS Code, inside VS Code, we're going to search on motherboard. Whoops. And just up above here, this is where the issue I think resides. So I'm going to backspace. I'm going to space once. Then I'm going to say -1 on the other part of the keyboard, and I'll hit delete just to make sure there's nothing on the other side of it. and then we'll just rebuild it. So I'll clean, and then I'll build. So there's something in the steps that I screwed up that we can hopefully sort out. And I'll check on the chat while that's going on. Yeah, I pretty much guessed you wanted to know what was going on between the two boards. It's called user error. And in this case, I'm the user. So let me put this so you can view it better. I'm going to right click on .pio, reveal in Explorer, navigate down to where it is, right click, send it to the D drive. This is the one inside the USB converter thing. And then I'm going to go back to the workbench, pop out the drive, take the drive back out, and pop it in here and see if that was the issue. Otherwise, we could download a new firmware and try this from scratch. Plug it in, see what happens after it loads. And something is corrupted on this particular firmware that I'm building. So the next stage is to actually go into VS Code, close it down, and start from scratch. So if I go to VS Code, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to File. I'm going to close the folder because something's corrupted. Give that a second to clean up. Then I'm going to go to my desktop. And I'm going to go to my downloads folder. Inside my downloads folder, I'm going to delete this folder because there's probably something wrong with it. I'm going to go to the build I downloaded last month, and I'm going to extract it because we've used this a couple dozen times. This might take a second to extract. And I'll check on the chat while that's going on. So you still have the blown chip on your motherboard? Oh, you're looking for a heat-resistant mat? Let's see, I'm trying to figure out what you're saying here. Having a break from 3D printing for a month. I got confused when I saw Mo. And also, we call it the mailman. So the post, I think of computers when I hear post, which is power on self-test. So my terminology is obviously different from most people's. So now that that's unzipped, we're going to go back to VS Code. Let me make sure that you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go to Explorer, open folder, go to downloads, open the first one, the second one, select folder. All we're going to do is test to make sure that this is working. So we'll go to Marlin, source, core. We'll search on SGen-L. And I'm searching in the wrong place. Sorry, boards, SGen. And there's several of these, so you have to do SGen-L. And it's not this one because that's the 1.0 version, it's the 2.0, so we'll copy that. We'll close out of boards, and core and source, go to configuration.h, search on motherboard. We'll paste it over here. I'll move up to the first serial port, backspace, -1. Then I'll go to platformio.ini, I'll change the default environment to LPC 1768, or excuse me, 9. And then I will clean and I will build. And let me check on the chat. Yeah, there's a lot of weird terms that I use sometimes that you might not always know what I'm saying. When I say POPO, it means power on, power off. Or power off, power on, pardon me. I'll wake up in a minute. So that completed, so I'm going to click on on .pio, right click, reveal in Explorer. Double check to see you can see what I'm seeing. Go to .pio, build LPC 1769, right click, and right now I have the drive in the board, so let me go back over and grab that real quick. So I'll power off the board, pop the drive, put the drive in here, and put this in the computer. And then if this doesn't work, I'm guessing bad drive, but it's probably not a bad drive, it's just me. So let me go back to the other folder where it was on the desktop. I'm going to right click on firmware.bin, send it to my USB drive. And you can't see what I'm doing, sorry about that. So right click on firmware.bin, send to the USB drive. I've already done it, so I'm going to cancel what I did or replace it. Now I'll go back to the desktop. Pop out the drive, take this, place it in here, power it up, and then check the desktop as soon as we're done. And it turns out that was the issue. So inside of VS Code earlier, when I used my numlock keyboard, it's a habit of mine, I did -1 on it, and numlock might not be enabled, or there's something else going on where it's broken because the keyboard's like 20 years old. So maybe I need to replace my keyboard. But that solved the problem. So now you can see the drive. But I know there was another question that people had that I didn't know the answer to at first, and I think it works. So let me show you this real quick. This is a mistake that I did or did not know because I can't find any printed information. They said, or I thought they said, you needed a 128 megabit drive. So we're going to test this out and see if we can do it on an 8 gigabit one. So let me open this up. I would tell you about affiliate links that I'll put them in the description, but usually on live stream I forget to, so I'm gonna probably need to use scissors on this. So there's one. So we'll test this Siri out and see if we can get it to work. I think it does work. So I'm going to power the board off, pop this out, junk it. This, I'm going to use my converter for it. So I'll pop this open. Of course, they make it so you can't pop it open easy. There we go. I'm going to grab this. I'm not going to use theirs because I have another card for this. I like this now. It seems more reliable. I'll pop that in there and put it in the computer. And we'll go over and test this Siri out. So if I go over to the desktop, right now you see a D drive. Let's right click on it. We'll do format because I don't know what it is, but it's probably FAT32 already. I'll click start, do the quick format, close, nothing's on it. So let's then drop something on it. So if we go to here, go down to LPC 1769, reveal and explorer, go into here, right click on firmware.bin and send it over. What we're going to do is just confirm that it changes to firmware.cur, which means that it loaded on the D drive. So I'm going to pop this back in, and if this does work, then you can use an 8 gigabit drive because they're easier to find too. Just remember the formatting is probably FAT32. So I'm going to slide this in, but now you see why I put the modeler putty on the actual board so things don't slide all over the place. Plug that in. Sounds like it's loading. We'll check the computer's desktop. And we have a second drive and it's firmware.cur, so it does work. So that was something I was going to check a while ago and didn't have a chance to do. Yeah, I haven't ever desoldered a controller chip. I don't think that I'm that good. Also, I don't have a microscope to look under yet, but one of these days. Let's see, I have had some micro SD card over a certain amount of gig. Let's see, that will not work due to the size of the SD card. I'm sure that possibly is the case. I know that with like certain Windows machines, there's limits to sizes that you can see that were over 2 gig at one point, but I think they fixed that problem years ago. But I'm coming from the perspective of very old computers when I say there's issues. So now that we got that working and it works on that size, I might try a bigger size when I can find one. But that appears to work. Let me check. Oh, sorry, I got excited for a second. I found another ribbon cable and was hoping that was the one. But there's other stuff I wanted to show you, but I don't think I have the time to show you today. But hopefully in a couple of days when I actually learn how to use it, I'll show you that process too. So just so everyone knows, I will be online tomorrow at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And Adrian and I hopefully will get a little bit further with the Ender 5 upgrade now that we possibly have the right wiring so that we can show you. We actually tested it out earlier this afternoon and he was able to move his motors, but we had to go back from working from scratch to show him how to verify they're working. So probably tomorrow what we'll end up doing is we'll finish up the wiring for the Z-axis, make sure that it's nice and secure. We'll then probably do the BL touch. It might be very messy. I still have to look at the steps, but I've had a long work week, so I gotta take some time to sleep. And hopefully I'll be fresh in the morning. So everyone take care, be safe, and I'll catch up with you tomorrow.